Yeah, I'm Michelle, Brightview Senior Living in Norwalk. I forgot where I left off, but welcome to our Meet the Author event with the wonderful best-selling author, Tracy Lawrence. I'm just going to hand it over to her to get started. You all know me on here. So, Tracy, take it away.
Thanks so much, Michelle. Hey, everybody. Hope you're having a good Thursday, and I welcome you all. I'm so glad you decided to join us here today. And I just before I get started, I want to get a sense of who's joining us, because I like to know what my audience wants to get out of my talks. And if I know who you are and what you're looking for, then I can kind of tailor my talk a little bit to who you guys are. So I'm going to ask Michelle to launch a poll. All right.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Yes. So 45% are currently caring for someone with dementia, which is amazing. Okay. So all right, and some have cared for, some are concerned they may have to care for. Okay. All right. So I think it's pretty safe to say the majority are currently caring for someone with dementia. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to talk about things that really concern people who are caring for someone with dementia. So I'm going to start with a little short presentation, and I'm going to share my screen. All right. So where will my husband stay, and other awkward questions posed by widows in cognitive decline. A humorous look at dementia. So, I know from experience that a lot of people who are caregiving someone with dementia, look, it's a terrible thing to have to go through, and there's no doubt about that. And it can be one of the most challenging things a human can have to face. But by the same token, there can be some very rewarding things that happen, and it can be sometimes a little, it can be fun. But what's really important is to know that you can laugh about it and it doesn't make you a bad person. So the first section I call, can you repeat that? So do you have aging parents? And what have you been noticing lately? And people who do have aging parents, if they're at the beginning, all right, they may they may start to notice that their loved ones are repeating themselves, or that they ask the same question over and over again because they're having trouble retaining new knowledge. And I get it, because I've been where you are and I beat the odds 2 times. So these guys are my why. This is Herb and Roz. And I love this picture because this is my parents in their prime. They were so damn cute.
They are.
Just starting to have some fun. And if you look closely, you can actually see the cigarette in my father's hand. It was his constant companion until the following year, when he had coronary bypass surgery, and his cardiologist said, "Herb, I'm going to cut you open like a chicken, and I'm going to tinker with your ticker. And if you don't want me having to do that more than once, then you're going to stop that nasty smoking habit of yours." And he did. He quit cold turkey. So he had a double bypass surgery, and he got through it well, and those grafts lasted him 20 years. And these are my folks in 2002. This is them in their apartment in Florida. And I love that they were having such a good time. They were living their lives. They had a social life. They were having fun. And I had a really good relationship with my dad. I was on the phone with him frequently, at least once a week, but often more. And I had no idea until I went to see them in 2003 in Florida that my dad was having some significant health issues. And things got really bad after he had a diagnostic test, an open lung biopsy, to find out why he wasn't breathing so well. and it turned out he had pulmonary fibrosis. But it also turned out that they didn't close him up so good after the test, and he was bleeding internally. He needed 4 units of blood, and it was at that point when his body was put under such a tremendous amount of stress that his dementia came on full force, and he lost his short-term memory. Now, my father was a really dynamic, funny guy. And once that happened to him, he was no longer the person he valued being, and he did not want to live anymore. And so, as a family, we came together and we determined that the smart thing to do would be to honor his wishes and not prolong his life with any heroic measures. And so, by July of 2004, my father perished. He had he had congestive heart failure, and it's strange, but I really kind of thought that my mom wouldn't live very long once my father was gone because they were so close. But much to my surprise, she went back to living independently in Florida. And this is mom in 2007. She was 78 years old, and it was right before she had her lifestyle lift. And I was very happy for her because it was like such a life affirming thing to do. You know, it's like let's tighten things up a little bit. So she was doing fine. She was living an independent life. My husband and I, and that's my husband right there, Bob. We would go down to Florida on a regular basis, and we didn't take vacations for us anymore. We would drive down and go visit mom and see how she was doing and take her shopping and make sure that all the things that needed to be done were being done. And keep an eye on her. And in 2009, when this photo was taken, I brought my mom up to live with us for a little while. She needed to have gallbladder surgery, and I navigated through that with her and got her problem taken care of. And she recovered very quickly and wanted to go back to Florida. So, okay, sent her back to Florida. But at that point, I kind of sort of knew that she wasn't going to be able to be completely independent. So I hired somebody to be her, shall we say, personal assistant, who could kind of, take her places and give her some quality of life and fill in for all the things that I did for her when she was with me, but I wasn't ready to move to Florida. So, and she did okay with that gal, but eventually that gal moved on and got another job. She didn't want me to replace her. We went back and forth, and finally it seemed like the best thing to do was to have mom come live with us. And in 2010, she did. And she lived with Bob and me for not quite a year. She had a psychotic break where she was just full blown hallucinating. She was seeing things that I couldn't see, and she could not be left alone. She was falling a lot. I have hardwood floors throughout my house, and I have a staircase. I was terrified that she was going to fall down the stairs and really hurt herself. So I found an assisted living facility for her, and she went to assisted. In time, the assisted place that she was at wasn't serving her very well. And I had chosen that particular place because they had a memory wing. But by the time my mother hit crisis, where she really needed to be in the memory wing, they didn't have a room available. And so I was in a predicament. And I'm going to talk about that phase because that's probably one of the more interesting things that's happened to me in my life, where you think you find a situation for your loved one that's going to be okay for a while, and then things just get crazy because you can't predict when changes are going to happen. So I will reveal what that period was like and how a sense of humor was really essential to getting me through it. And this photo in 2014, it's you can see the dramatic difference between the previous photos. My mom was no longer able to really speak very well. She was not comfortable having her plate in her mouth, and so of course it changed her appearance greatly and her ability to articulate. And late in the year, she was hospitalized a couple of times. She survived sepsis. Had another situation where she was bleeding internally, and it was then that we discovered that she had an undiagnosed condition called polycythemia vera, where she was producing too many red blood cells, and her intestines ruptured, and she was bleeding like crazy. And it turned out that it was her body's way of shedding the excess red blood cells. And it was at that point we determined that the proper course for her was hospice, keeping her comfortable, and helping her to transition to the last stage in her life. And in April 2015, on her 64th wedding anniversary, my mother crossed over. So a big part of the reason that I do this is this very important statistic. 50% of caregivers to people with dementia die before the person they are caring for. And that really troubles me. And I do not want to see people die if they don't have to. And a lot of the reason that this happens is because when you're caregiving someone with dementia, you are spending so much time focused on their needs that you don't take care of yourself. And that's a very common problem. And for spousal caregivers, 63% die before their loved one. And that's particularly important. If you're an adult child and you have parents who are an intact couple, where one parent is caring for the other parent, it's extremely important to note that the parent who's giving care is in peril, because they tend to be older. They're very focused. While they're caregiving their loved one, that loved one is no longer the best friend and partner they're used to having. So it's a very distressing situation to be in. So if you are the child of parents where one is caring for the other, that caregiver parent needs extra support, and we got to keep an eye on them. So caregiving is dangerous. Most people fall into it without any preparation. And so I try to raise awareness of this danger so that people will take better care of themselves, and so that they will do what they need to do in order to take the best possible care of themselves and their loved ones. Okay, and that's why I got my book published, because people really need to understand, and stories are powerful. They convey information in ways that just telling people stuff don't. And if you relate to some of the things that I'm talking about, you might act sooner. Dementia is a tragedy, but it's okay to laugh. And in fact, it is mandatory. So understanding this is very empowering. So do you guys have any questions for me so far? Or should I just keep on going? Okay. Adventures in Caregiving. Where will my husband stay? So the title of this came from a chapter in my book, Dementia Sucks, Paste on a Happy Face. There was a chapter where my mom had been through a whole lot of stuff. It started when she was in assisted, and she I had placed her, and I went down to Florida to sell her apartment. And when I came back, I called to see how everything was. And she gets on the phone with me and says, I got to keep the line clear because I'm expecting a call from the Jewish mafia. And I said, okay, Mom, what's going on? And she starts to explain to me how there was this man in a wheelchair in the lobby of her building, and it was my father, her husband, and he wouldn't talk to her. And she was very frustrated. And she said, but the Jewish mafia is supposed to call and explain everything to her. I said, okay, Mom. um, let me get back to you. I'll see you a little later. And I called the nurse at the facility to see if she knew anything. And at first she said she didn't, but then she said, "Oh, right, yeah. Um, I'm gonna give your mom a urine test and see if she's got a UTI." And I'm like, UTI? What's that got to do with this? Now, for those of you who don't know, UTIs we all become very familiar with them when we're caregiving someone with dementia, because UTIs really cause a lot of problems in the elderly. And one of the problems that they can cause is severe uh, perceptual impairment. They can become psychotic, delusional, agitated, and it can kill them. So, I've had UTIs throughout my life. I never thought of them as being particularly dangerous. They're annoying. You take antibiotics, you take analgesics, and they go away. But in older people, they can have catastrophic consequences. And in my mother's case, she went nuts. So, it turned out that she did in fact have a urinary tract infection, which landed her in the hospital. She had to be placed on IV antibiotics. And once she was alleviated of her infection, the doctor suggested that she go to rehab, because she'd gotten weak from the infection and from being in the hospital. So she was moved to rehab. And when she first got to rehab, she was very happy. She thought she was on a cruise ship. And she was she was really enjoying herself, and I felt she was doing well. And on a particular Memorial Day weekend, I received a call from the folks at the facility saying, you need to get down here. Your mother is threatening people with knives. And I said, what in the who now? And they said, yeah, she got a hold of these knives from the dining hall, and she's threatening people with them. And I said, okay, I will get there as quickly as I can. And before I could get there, they called and they said they had called the police and had her removed. And so they took her to Chilton Hospital, and they began to do diagnostics on her and see what was going on. And it was determined that her next stop should be a psychiatric facility. And so we went through all the stuff to find a psychiatric facility for her, and she went, and she spent several weeks in the psychiatric facility where they administered a number of different antipsychotic medications and medications to calm her down. And it was then that I realized that a lot of the medications that they give people in this situation are extremely dangerous for them. And when I first saw it on the website, I freaked out, and they said, calm down, this is what we have. So, all right. So, Mom spent several weeks in the psychiatric hospital. Eventually, they figured out which combination of medications would enable her to return to polite society, and she was returned to her assisted living. And after a couple of days there, she started to try to run away. And they told me that in order for them to keep her, I would have to hire a 24/7 caregiver to make sure that she didn't run away or have altercations with other residents. So I started looking for another place for mom where they would be able to deal with her behaviors and be able to accommodate her and enable her to live the highest possible quality of life. So I found a place where it was all memory care, and they were accustomed to dealing with people who had these kinds of violent behaviors. And it was a small population. Because one of the triggers that we discovered with my mom was that if she was in large groups, she would get triggered because she thought that anybody who wasn't talking to her was talking about her. And so whenever she saw people talking to each other, she would get triggered because she thought they're talking about me and they're going to marry me off to somebody, and and I can't have that. And so it was time, and we I found a facility that had 6 other residents. She was going to be number 7, and so it was a good situation for her. And when she first got there, she was very happy. She loved the place. And one of the other residents was someone who she thought for sure was her husband. As soon as I saw him, I kind of figured that, she was going to Herbieize him. And she sure enough did. And she, when I got there, I'd already set up her room for her. And I had her taken to the facility in an ambulance. And when I got there, she was so excited. She loved her room. It was all pink. And I set it up. I hung up all her pictures and I got everything situated. And then she says to me, "Your father is here. I have incontrovertible proof." And that she was able to say incontrovertible and use it in a sentence was pretty impressive. And she brings me this binder, and it's her chart. It's got all her stuff in it. It's like, but she's sure that this proves that it's hers. That this guy is her husband. And she's wearing these glasses, and they're really big. I'm like, "Mom, where'd you get those glasses?" And she said, "They're my husband's, but they work." She borrowed this guy's glasses. So I'm looking at the chart and it's like, okay, Mom, sure. And one of the things that I learned during this episode is you don't correct, you redirect, you go along with it. And the more you go along with it, the better things go. It's like, okay. And my mom would assign roles to all the people in whichever facility she was in. She would point to people and tell me who they were and what their relationships were and how she knew them. One really great one was that when she was still at the rehab, she had a roommate who was completely lucid, lovely woman. I come to visit Mom, and I said, "Oh, I found you," and she's like, "Yeah, how you doing?" I said, "Well, how'd you find me?" I said, "Well, your roommate told me where you were." And she said, "She turns tricks all night long." And I'm like, "Mom," and she's like, "No, I'm serious. She keeps me up. She's all night long. She's turning tricks." Okay. So she settled in this place, and she was okay for a while. But one of the issues with this place is it was so small that there were a couple of people who she got along with, mostly men who she could flirt with. She became extremely flirtatious. She was like a high school cheerleader. I couldn't believe it. I even asked her, I was like, so Ma, how old do you think you are now? About 17? She's like, yeah, that's about right. Okay. And and I was really excited when she found this one guy who actually did not have dementia. He was deaf, and he had some mobility issues, and that's why he was at this place. But and he was supposed to transfer to another facility that had higher functioning people, but he was so intrigued with my mother that he didn't want to leave. And she would do little dances for him, and she'd sing into his microphone, and I was like, oh, this is great. And I was so excited. And then the next time I went to visit, I asked one of the gals, like, so how's mom doing with Alan? And they said, oh, she's off him. She's into Fred now. And I'm like, say what? And she's like, yeah, you didn't know your mom was a player, huh? So she floated like a little butterfly from flower to flower. And she did okay, but there weren't enough high functioning people there at that point in time, and she got very unhappy, and she started begging me to go back to the other place. And I started getting upset, and I knew I couldn't send her back to the other place. There was just no way. She just, we couldn't afford it, and it just wasn't the right place for her. So I went through a process, and I spoke to um, a social worker who actually spent time with my mom and got to know her, and he's a peer. He would go and he would visit with her and see how she was doing. And we had a really productive chat one day where he told me that he thought she was where she needed to be. And he said, would you agree that your mother needs to be where she is right now? And I said, yeah, I do. And he said, so you realize that one of the reasons she's so high functioning is that she's where she needs to be, right? And I was like, Yeah, I guess." I said, "But I feel like I've got my sixth grader in with a bunch of kindergartners." And he said, "That may well be, but you have to understand that the care that she's receiving right now is what she really needs. So there's no ideal situation. There's no one place where you can put somebody where they're going to be happy forever. And virtually everyone who lives in a facility at one point or another, they're going to be asking to go home. It's just it's part of this. And you have to learn how to accept it. You can't move your mom every time she tells you she's unhappy. So I said, okay, I get it. And I was grateful. And, and when I would see my mom and she would complain to me, I would do what I could to change the subject and look for things that she liked. And what happened in the next phase was that she actually moved to another facility in the same system. This was a chain of memory care homes. And this new one had more women, and it was kind of better for her in a lot of ways. And the staff there was really well suited to dealing with her. And because she was so high functioning, she used to follow certain favorites around, and she would help, like, with folding laundry, and she would, like, do little clerical things. And in her mind, she was back at her job. She thought that she was working for A&S in Brooklyn doing her clerical stuff. And that was great. And like one time she bugged me, like she wanted money so she could be able to pay for car fare. And so I'm a graphic artist. So what I did was I made her a bus pass with her name on it, and I gave it to her, and I said, "Mom, anytime you feel like you really, like, want to go out and go shopping, you can take this bus pass with you. So when you go out, okay, you show this to the driver and you'll be able to go wherever you want." Now I knew she wasn't going anywhere, right? There was no way she could go anywhere by herself, but just giving her something that satisfied that need to know that she wasn't stuck, that kind of made her feel like she had some kind of freedom, was helpful for her. And so, here you go, Mom. Here's your bus pass. Oh, okay. I'll put it in my wallet. So, and it was just, I was constantly being challenged to kind of, look for ways to satisfy the the demands that she was making while not necessarily putting her in any kind of peril. So, um, so at that point, um, Mom was really pretty satisfied and pretty stable. And but you still had to keep an eye on her. And there was one episode where I went to visit, and there was a an activities person who was showing me photographs that she took of my mother, and they had a little birthday party for her. And I was looking at the pictures on the camera with the person, and I could see my mother, like, she's sitting there and like her lips starting to curl. And I'm like, okay, Mom, what's the matter? She's like, I hate her. She's a thief. She has no. I'm like, okay, okay, okay. Let's take a deep breath. Okay, why don't we go over here and why don't you show me what you've been working on? And so by changing the focus to being on her rather than paying attention to what somebody else was showing me, I was able to diffuse the situation and calm Mom down. Another time at this facility, I get a call. um, Tracy, we need you to get down here. What's the matter? And I noticed that the phone number was the cell phone of the caregiver who was calling me. And I said, what's going on? And she said, well, your mom grabbed the house phone and she got outside and she's screaming out at traffic that she's in trouble and she needs help. And I said, okay. I was like, can you do you know how to turn the speaker on your phone? And she said, yes. And I said, good. Okay. So take me and the phone outside. And she said, your mother's throwing rocks at me. It's like, okay, hold the phone up where she can hear it. Mom, can you hear me? You're killing me. Mom, can you hear me? You don't. Mom. Yes. Put the rocks down, Rosie. Okay. All right. Now, I want you to go with Tamika and go back inside, and I'll be there in a few minutes. Okay. So they went back inside, and I said, I will be back inside, and I will be there as quickly as I can. It was about 20 minutes. I ran up there, and by the time I got there, Mom was calm, and she was looking kind of sheepish. And I was like, Mom, you okay? Yeah. And I was like, are you all right? And she's like, yeah, I'm all right. It's like, is there something bothering you right now? No, I don't, I haven't seen you in a long time. Mom, I was here this morning. Yeah? Yeah. So I tell you what, um, why don't we take your meds right now? And you're gonna go to bed, have a good night's sleep, and I'll see you in the morning. And she calmed down. I handed her the cup. She took her drink, and she went to bed, and she was able to sleep through the night. But by meeting her where she was, and by not not overreacting, by just being with her, I was able to calm her down and get her to get to a more a more calm place. But these situations came up a lot, especially in the evening. There's a condition called sundowning, and a lot of people with dementia experience this. It's often said that sundowning happens because as the sun gets lower in the sky, people's moods tend to get more depressed. But I have a theory myself that part of the problem is that people take their medications in the morning, and later in the day, their medications are wearing off, and so a lot of times they're, the things that are making them agitated are coming back. So um, it's something that you have to keep an eye on, and it's a common phenomenon. But it can be managed. And one of the things that I liked about the place where my mom was at was that a lot of what they tried to do was manage her behaviors without getting crazy with the medications. And I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind, because medication shouldn't be the first go-to, in my humble opinion. I think that if someone is in an appropriate environment where they're getting they're involved in activities, and they're involved in socialization, and there's some enjoyment in their life, that the need to medicate them is far less than in places where the people are left to their own devices, and they're not guided towards more rewarding and enjoyable activities. So that's a lesson that I learned during my journey with my mom. And the right environment, can change. And I think that was yes. So do you guys have any questions?
Yeah, I had a question about what you just mentioned. As you talked about with the medication, a lot of times, I know we all have heard that you'll have some of the facilities, they will pretty much medicate the patient so they don't have to worry about interacting with them. It, um, do these facilities have, or how do you measure whether or not they have enough activities um, for your loved ones? Um, because a lot of times they may have it on the list
Mhm.
saying that they're going to do these things, but then you find out they end up medicating them basically.
Yes, and there's no substitute for being an active advocate for your loved one. And I know that at facilities like Brightview, that their people are great, and they're always, interacting with people and making sure that they're occupied, and that that their needs are being met. But I will tell you from experience, and I've talked to a lot of people in the field about this. When I used to go to visit my mom, the caregivers there would say to me, you know, you being here as much as you are is so important, not just for your mom, but for us. She said, it's really great for us to see you here. It's great for the other residents. They actually enjoy having people come in from the outside. Um, and, all individuals are different. Everybody's got different needs, different wants. And, it's really a matter of being involved, partnering with the staff at the place where your parent is, and making sure that you're working together to make sure that they're getting adequate attention, adequate activities, because everyone's different. Like my mom was really she wasn't a really active person, um and so she didn't have like a lot of need for necessarily, like, physical activity, but just having someone to talk to. She had a lot of playmates at this facility. So, and the stories that those girls would tell me, or some of them were really hilarious. And so they were so high functioning that some of the things that they would tell me, I would get a little alarmed, because they were kind of convincing. But then when I realized who it was coming from and what it was about, is like, okay, they cooked that one up. you know, and I do a little investigation, excuse me, to make sure that, what they were telling me that was concerning was not really true. And it was easy enough to verify. But yeah, it's a very individual thing. And we as loving family members really need to be willing to ask a lot of questions. And I know Michelle can probably tell you, she's happy to answer those questions because, you appreciate families who care enough, you know. And sadly, at the places I'd go, there were a lot of people who their families almost never came, or they come once or twice a year and just leave them. And they would say to me, we're human. So, if we know a family member is going to be showing up or coming to visit the person, then who do you think is going to get more attention? So, but it's a human thing, and listen, I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad or, but it's a human thing. So the people who get attention from loved ones tend to get more attention from the people that they get care from in the facility as well. So, and it's a team sport, right? If we want to do what's best for our loved ones, then we need to team up with the people at the facilities where they are and ask a lot of questions, get the social workers involved, get the activities people involved, get the aides involved. And it's not like a one and done, right? Because there's turnover. People leave, and another interesting thing about having loved ones in a residence, the population changes, right? People move out, people move to another plane of existence. um, Things change. So, by having regular involvement, having regular talks and team meetings with people at the facility, you can really take the temperature of the person you're caring for. And incidentally, if you're a caregiver, a lot of people make the mistaken assumption that if you put your loved one in a facility, you're no longer a caregiver. That's not true. You're actually always a caregiver because you're overseeing their care and you're the one who's helping to guide things. You are a partner to the people who are doing the day-to-day hands-on, but you're still the caregiver. You're still the one who's guiding the course of care. So and you should give yourself a little pat on the back if you're in that role, because it's still difficult. You're still taking care of a lot of stuff. So, and that just doesn't go away as long as someone is still living and breathing, and, and we need to be involved throughout. So thanks for the question, Larry. I appreciate it. Anyone else have a question?
Anybody?
I had another question. How did you manage to keep yourself sane? And you seem like you're, still energized, still full of, life yourself. But you had to deal with a number of years with your mom having to go back and forth. How did you manage to get through that period? And especially since, I read some of your books, so a lot of it fell on your shoulders. So how did you manage to do that?
Well, writing the book itself was really, and thank you for the question, is very therapeutic. I also used to do things like when my mom made me really crazy. One of the things I realized that, look, the same person who made me crazy as a teenager was still there. And she did a lot of the same things that drove me crazy as an adult. So, but the thing was, when I was a teenager, I could run up to my room and slam the door and not deal with her. But when my mom was living with me and she made me crazy, I couldn't just like run away because she could burn the house down. But one thing that I would do periodically is like I would go sneak out and I would sit in my car and I would blast the stereo and scream and sing at the top of my lungs. And that was very therapeutic. And I would talk to friends, but it's tough to find friends who really understand what you're going through, because if they're not caregiving themselves, or if they haven't been through it themselves, they don't get you. I joined a senior caregiver group on Facebook, which was really good for me. Because I could actually, I could go on anytime and I could post stuff and people would get back to me. And for me, it's like I'm a person who likes to help. And what would happen is, people would post questions and they'd have problems, and I would like kind of give them resources, because that's what I do. And by helping other people, it made me feel good. And so that's kind of how I cope. I write, I help other people. I share what works for me, and also be very forgiving, because a lot of times when you're caregiving, you'll get really angry, and you might say really nasty things that you can't even believe are coming out of your own mouth. But you have to forgive yourself,
Mhm.
because you got to realize that you're doing the very best that you can, just as your parents did the best that they could for you when they were raising you. You're doing the very best that you can for them when you're taking care of them, and being human and giving up a lot of things in your life, giving up the freedom to do whatever you want to when you're caring for somebody, can make you a tad testy. And my husband, sometimes he'd come home from work and he'd hear me talking to my mom, and something like really nasty would come out of my mouth, and my husband would look at me and say, "What did you just say to her? How can you talk to her like that?" I was like, "You haven't been here all day. You don't know what it's like."
Mm.
So it's really it's a matter of allowing yourself to be human, allowing yourself to forgiveness, and also respite is extremely important. You got to take time off. You got to find a way to have somebody take care of that person for you for a while. So all of those things really helped me to get through. So thanks for the question.
Are some of those things you talk about in your course? Is that
Yes,
all in
yes.
the course?
Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, as Larry mentioned, I designed a family care survival course, because I realized that a lot of people now, especially in the age of COVID, are getting a preview of caregiving. A lot of parents who were on top of it and who were totally self-possessed and independent in March are now fearful and unable to do the things that they used to do by themselves, and they're leaning more heavily on their adult children. And so I created the family care survival course for those children, because it introduces them to all the concepts. It introduces them to what caregiving is, the conversations that you need to have with your parents, how to have a productive conversation, because usually when you bring up the topic, you get pushback, the things that you need to talk about, what you need to do with the information that you uncover once you have the conversation, and how to turn that information into a plan that will protect you and your loved ones, so that you'll have everything all in order, so that when you do have to go to full-time caregiving mode, everything will be taken care of. I also talk about things that you need to do for yourself, so that in 20, 30 years, when you yourself might need care, you'll have your stuff organized so that your younger loved ones will be able to take great care of you. So that course is actually on Udemy, and if you would like to know how to enroll in the course, or if you can't find it on Udemy, you're more than welcome to go to my website, dementiasucks.com. It's got links to all my stuff, and you can learn more about the course and about the book and about my speaking and all the other fun stuff that I do. Oh, any other questions, guys? Michelle?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you for sharing, those stories. And, the question that came about, medication and programming, it's really engaging the residents and trying those interventions, to learn about them. Every resident that moves into our community, we get a life story on
Mhm.
them. So before they move in, we're already researching how to communicate with them. We have a wonderful, we call it a flourishing program when every resident moves in, particularly now with COVID, we even updated it to really focus on welcoming them to the community, because when they come in, there are a couple of days they do have to go into isolation. It's only a couple of days at this point, but it's saying, okay, this is the reality right now. This is the new normal. And how are we going to be creative to make our residents have a smooth transition to the community? So, for example, our last resident that moved in, we know she likes authentic Italian food. We know that she loves opera, and her sister lives here. So we made sure that we just embraced her when she came in here. We knew she had some, anything new at any age is difficult. I started this new job in the middle of COVID, and I'm 42 years old, and I said, I'm scared, starting a new job. How am I going to do during COVID? So, it's really putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and saying, this is new to them at any age. So we just want to make sure that they get the TLC that they deserve, and really getting to know them and taking that time to, it's caring, it's wanting to be there for them. It's not just, okay, we have a new move in and good luck and bingo at 2. It's really be so much more than that. It's really getting to know them, like I said, and just they're like, oh, I like Andrea Bocelli, or Pavarotti or whatever. And just playing music in her room. And that's what I did. Like, I bought her an Echo Dot, put it in her room. As the minute she walked in, Bocelli was playing, and she goes, oh, and saying, oh, I heard you like lasagna. So, and that's the connection that you make with them. So it's all those interventions that we're responsible for our residents, to give them a vibrant living. That's really what it's about. So just to answer that question, and and any medication that, we give to a resident is from a doctor's order. And we have someone that comes in once a week to review those meds. So it's really a partnership with the family, like Tracy said, because they still are caregiving. It's our jobs as, the experts when they're here. And then we also lean on the doctors to have that partnership, to know what the best health and wellness program is for each resident. Just wanted to say that, it's all about that. It's not one person making the decision. It's knowing who to go to and having the best partners in place for our residents. With that said, any other questions before? Do we want to do that last poll?
Yeah, why don't we do the exit poll?
Okay.
See if everybody's still awake.
Yeah, so that one, so polls. Now, the only thing is, that poll is closed. I went in here, it says I only have one closed, but I know which one. I know I put 3 polls in here, so it's only going to 1. That's interesting. All right, well, I guess we can't do that. So
Okay.
at least I got the initial poll, because I'm looking, there's no other polls
So cool.
available. Oh, well. So, but anything before, so I know that Tracy in the poll said, if you have any questions, you want to reach out to Tracy, either you can reach out to, I have all your emails. I can reach out and give you her contact information, my contact information. Thank you, Tracy. So I saw in the chat, she has her email. I have all of your emails, so I'm just going to reach out and see if you need anything. If you have any questions about Brightview Senior Living and you want to schedule a visit, you can reach out to me, or if you want to know more about Tracy, you can reach out to her. And this is really just a resource for you, because I know that this journey is very difficult, because it's day to day. We're human beings. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So I just provide educational resources for families and anybody that wants to know more. So just reach out to us if you have any questions. Okay.
Oh, and I have to say one more thing.
Yeah.
The first question that was like the title of the Zoominar
Yeah.
Where will my husband stay? That was when I told my mom that we were moving, and she asked me, where will my husband stay? Now that was at a time when my father was long dead and she thought she had another husband. So the answer to the question was, he'll stay where he always stays, Mom. And she said, oh, okay. So never feel like you gotta say, remind somebody that someone who has perished is dead, because it only makes them sad all over again. So just give them a non-painful answer. It's a
I
lot.
agree. I agree. I have many residents that talk to me, and you know what? Just have the conversation. Don't be afraid to live in the moment with them. That's what I say. This is not I just how when I first started in assisted living, I remember a resident came up to me and I was very uncomfortable, not with them. I was uncomfortable with what I was going to say. I wasn't uncomfortable with them. And I'm
Right.
like, I'm just going to live in the moment. They're like, you know what? I have to go to work in the morning. I can't find my computer, things, whatever they were saying. And I was like, oh, so, you just go with it, and don't be afraid to, just like I said, live in the moment with them. And if they mention their husband who is deceased, just say, what do you love most about your husband? Because even though they're gone, that they still love those things about that person, and there's nothing wrong with talking about it. So it's just connecting in a different way, and that's what I do. I'm like,
Mhm.
tell me more about your wedding day. Even though it happened so many years ago, what's wrong with talking about it? What's wrong
Right.
with reminiscing? There's nothing
Right.
wrong with that.
Right.
So that's what I do. And I think it's amazing. And you learn so much about them because their long-term memory is usually like, intact. So you get to hear some really cool stories. That's
Yep.
how I take it.
Yep. I mean, I always had my mom traveled with photo albums.
Yeah.
It's like she loved to take them out and show them to people. What better way to help her to reconnect with?
I agree. And this is why I do what I do. I love it. I love the stories. I'm like, tell me more. Keep it coming.
Fantastic.